everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you my favourite books of 2019. It is finally time for me to talk about all of my favourite books of 2019. I know I post this video like a lot later in the year than like a lot of other people do, but this is just where it falls for me, kind of in my filming and upload schedule and all of that. And I figure, does anyone ever get tired of hearing about people's favorite books? I know I sure as heck don't. So let's just jump straight in and talk about all of the favorites. So before we get into the favorites, I do have a kind of dishonorable mention. I thought I would mention my worst, like least favorite book of the year. And that is This Charming Man by Marian Keyes. This is the only, I gave my lowest rating this year was a 1.5, and this is the only book that I gave 1.5 stars to. This is a chick lit women's fiction type of story, I guess, set in Ireland. I can't even remember exactly what it's about, but the problems I had with it were that there are trans characters in here. Well, would you describe them as trans? Maybe I'm misidentifying them, but the whole point is that the main character refers to them consistently as cross-dressers, and they tell her repeatedly that they do not want to be called that. Please do not call them that they find it offensive, all of that, and she just does it repeatedly. And that was my first major problem with it. In addition to that, it features domestic abuse is like a big part of the storyline, and I thought it was incredibly poorly handled. I don't want to get too much into it apart from that because it's a big downer, but I really, really, really didn't like that book. So that's my dishonorable mention. And then before we get into my top 10, I do have one honorable mention. I don't normally do honorable mentions, but I wanted to give this duology a quick shout out. And that is the Blood for Blood duology by Ryan Groudon. Blood for Blood I gave 4.5, so it was very close to making my favorite list, but Wolf by Wolf I still really enjoy, but I gave 4 stars. But I did want to give this a shout out because it is one of my favorite series that I read in 2019. This is, in case you don't know, is a YA alternate history. It's set in 1950s. Is it in the 1950s? Yeah, 1956. 1956 Germany. Was it even in Germany? Yes. And it's set in alternate history as if Adolf Hitler and the Axis powers won the Second World War. We're following a main character named Yael, who is entering a motorcycle race that kind of goes across Europe, because the winner of that race gets to have an audience with Hitler, and she wants to win the race so that she can kill Hitler. And on top of all of that, Yael is a shapeshifter. Really, 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 really enjoyed this duology. So I just thought I would give this one a little bit of a shout out before we get into my top 10. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10. So coming in, oh my god, so many like disclaimers, not really disclaimers, but I will say that I only gave 7. I don't include rereads, saying that because I've already rated them. Most of those rereads would already have been on favorites lists on my channel, so I don't include rereads. Again, these aren't 2019 releases. These are books that I read in 2019, and I only gave 7 like new to me books 5 stars in 2019. So only 7 of these are 5-star reads. So I do have included on this list some of my 4.5 stars. So it was hard to pick because even though I only had 7 5-stars, I had like another like 20 or something 4.5. So I had to narrow down which of those were going to make the top 10 list. So like I say, the first 3 of these on my rankings are 4.5 star rated reads. Not 5-star. You probably don't care, but I thought I'd mention it. I've got to move my legs again because this is my 4th video in a row that I filmed today, and my legs are really falling asleep. So coming in at number 10 on my favorites list was The Unholy Mooners by Christina Lauren. I'm sure you've all heard about this. This was a very popular book this year. It is a adult romance. It's a hate to love romance between Olive and Ethan. Olive is at her sister's wedding at the start of the novel, and the entire wedding gets food poisoning with the exception of Olive and Ethan, who is the best man and brother of the groom. And the bride had won her honeymoon in like as a prize, and because of that it's not reschedulable, like it's unable to be rescheduled, and they have to go. And so Olive, it's her twin sister, so Olive goes posing as her twin sister and Ethan posing as her husband, So, and they really don't get along. So it's hate to love with a fake marriage involved. And of course they run into people at the resort like who know them and they've got to pretend to be married. And there's all of that going on. It was so fun, so enjoyable, a really, really great romance that I would highly recommend. And that is my 10th favorite book of the year. Coming in at number 9 is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, or Michaelides. I don't know how to pronounce this. I should have looked it up, but I didn't. This is do I have any other thrillers on here? No, I just thought I'd check. I didn't think so. This is my favorite thriller of 2019. Thriller is my favorite genre, even though I've never given a thriller 5 stars, but I do have a couple of 4.5 star rated thrillers, and this is one of them. This follows what is his name? Theo, who's a psychotherapist, a forensic psychotherapist, and it follows this woman named Alicia who had the seemingly perfect marriage until one day her husband came home and she tied him to a chair, I think, and shot him 5 times in the face. And since she's done that, she's never spoken again. She's never uttered a word, and she's in a mental health facility, like a locked up mental health facility. And Theo is her new psychotherapist. It's a couple of years, I think, after the event, and he is trying to finally be the person who gets her to talk and figure out why she did what she did. This was incredible. One of the best thrillers I've ever read. The way it's crafted and everything like comes together in this, I just thought was so exquisitely done. If you're a thriller reader and you haven't read this, you definitely need, oh, I just kicked the chair and the camera, sorry. You have to give this a go. Like I said, it's my favorite thriller definitely that I read in 2019. Coming in at number 8, so this is my top rated of my 4.5 star reads, is The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. This is one of those reads that when I think about it, like really this probably should be upped to a 5 star because I genuinely really, really loved this book. This is a multi-generational saga about a grandmother, a mother, and then Ava Lavender. Ava Lavender was born with wings. So it is like a magical realism type of story, and you get the story of Ava and her mother and her grandmother, and I don't really want to tell you any more apart from that. This, and it's only not even that long, this was just exquisite. So beautifully written. There's the whole book for me was like building to this particular moment, and the build up to it, not even just like the actual event, but the build up to it and then the payoff were just, oh, it was so good. I really, really, really enjoyed this, obviously. So that is my number 8. Coming in at number 7, I don't own a copy of, excuse me, and that is We Should All Be Feminist by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is an essay that I read. It's the first of anything from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie that I had ever read. It's just her essay all about feminists and why we should all be one. This I just thought was amazing. I really felt empowered after I read this, which I think is incredible, like from a nonfiction essay. It doesn't necessarily say anything that I didn't already like know or kind of think, but the way that she words it and the way that she kind of puts into words like my own feelings and thoughts about things in a lot of ways was just incredible. And yeah, I just thought this was incredibly well done. I don't really have too much to say about it apart from that. Coming in at number 6 on my favorite books was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. This was my favorite romance of the year. I really adored this. This follows Stella and Michael. Stella has autism, and this is Own Voices for autism representation. And also Michael is half Vietnamese, and it is Own Voices for that representation as well. Stella has autism, and her family, her parents, are kind of getting to that stage where they're really wanting her to get married and have children. But she's not sure how that she's ever going to accomplish that because she doesn't feel comfortable kind of sexually. And so she hires Michael, who is an escort, to kind of teach her about intimacy and sex and all of that type of stuff. And it's about a romance between Stella and Michael, and this was just so well done. Michael is kind of an alpha male, but the best kind of alpha male I've ever really seen in a romance. He's an alpha male without ever really falling into being an asshole, which is very hard to do and rare in a romance. And I just was so invested in this romance. I thought it was really well done. I just loved everything about this. It's probably my favorite romance I've ever read. Definitely my favorite romance of 2019. So this definitely had to make my list. Coming in at number 5, so we're headed into the top 5. Coming in at number 5 was Wonder by R.J. Palacio. This is a middle grade novel about a boy named Augie who has a very severe facial deformity. And it's about him going to a real school. He's been, I guess, homeschooled or had tutors for his whole life, and he's actually going to like a real school for the first time. And, you know, going to be schooled with other kids and have to deal with them and how they react to his facial deformity. This was so beautiful. I read this quite early on in the year, and I have an incredibly vivid memory of sobbing as I was walking down the street, because I listened to this on audio, and I was walking down the street after I got off the bus from work, listening to the end part of this and just crying. I think this is so beautiful. It is such a beautiful message in it, not just for kids, like for adults. Like I say, I took stuff away from this. I just thought this was so beautiful. Like, such a beautiful story. This is definitely the book that if I had kids, I would give to my kids to read. My niece and nephew actually had read this before I read this, so like it's not like a book that I could pass on to them because they were ahead of the game and had already read it. But if I had kids or nieces and nephews who hadn't read this, this is definitely the type of book that I would be passing on to them to read, because I think it's a really important book. So there's that. Coming in at number 4 is Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. This was kind of a surprise book for me this year because this is quite heavy literary fiction, quite a prize winner in Australia, and those books typically go right over my head. Why does my hair look weird? So this is about a boy, what's his name? Eli, a boy named Eli, who it's set in the 80s? Yes, it's set in the 80s in an area of Brisbane in Australia, and we're following a boy who is coming from quite an unconventional upbringing. He's got an older brother who is mute. His parents are kind of involved in drugs. His babysitter is a convicted criminal. There's a lot going on, and it's basically a coming of age story. I'm not going to tell you any more about the plot aside from that. This was just so incredibly well done. And I recognize, like I've said before, that this book is not for everyone, because I lent this to my dad and he hated it. He didn't even finish it. But for me, and it's one of those books where I cannot pinpoint why I loved this the way that I did. It has a really, partly it's to do with, if I'm being completely honest, directly after I read this, I read an article of an interview with Trent Dalton of him talking about a lot of aspect for this and how parts of it are kind of autobiographical, and that just made it even more like meaningful. And I don't know, this book just stuck with me. It really did. It's one of those books where I can't explain it, but it just got under my skin and stuck with me, and it's one of those ones I want to reread it. I only read it like this year, but I'm already thinking about, wow, I really want to reread that and see if I get out of it again what I got out of it the first time that I read it. So highly recommend if you're into, well, I was going to say if you're into literary fiction, but I'm generally not always into literary fiction, and this one did everything right for me. Now we come to the top 3 of the year. Coming in at number 3 is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I just said that The Quiz Quotient is my favorite romance, but I forgot about Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is also a romance. So I guess I had 3 romances in my top 10 this year. I guess there's a reason why I said I want to read more romance in 2020. There's evidence right there, because I had 3 romance books that made my top 10. That's crazy. I can't even think when that would have happened before. Anyway, sidetracked. Red, White, and Royal Blue is a male-male new adult romance between the first son of the United States and the prince. I can never remember if it's England or Wales that he's the prince of, but he's a prince. And it's a hate to love kind of again, where they have kind of a rivalry at the start, and then stuff happens, romance blossoms. It was, sorry, I keep getting like, it's because I drink between videos, and then I get this like, almost like gassy frog in my throat, whatever. It was so enjoyable. The ride that I went on with these characters was just, I was in this book. Like, I was so in it. I was so invested in these characters and their romance. I loved all of the side characters as well. I also thought this book was incredibly funny. Like, the humor just really worked for me. There are actually a couple of moments in it. Again, I listened to this on audiobook. I don't have a copy of this because it's on my wish list. I haven't purchased a copy yet, but I do want to get my hands on a copy. But yeah, there are a couple of moments like in the audiobook where I remember I was walking on my lunch break. I was walking from work. I had an appointment somewhere and I was walking along the street listening, and I was literally like chuckling out loud to myself at a few moments. It was really humorous. It really worked for me. Like I said, I was in it. I was in it with these characters and their romance. Loved everything about this. It was just so incredibly enjoyable. So what else can you say? Coming in at number 2 on my favorites list is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. So taking a turn with a very different vibe of a story. This is about a little boy named Connor. A little boy, he's like 12 or 13, something like that, whose mother is dying of cancer. And he starts to be visited by a monster. This guy right here at night. That's all I'm really going to tell you. This is I highly recommend if you read this to pick up this like illustrated, there's a bad example. Where's the illustration? Why can I not find a single good example of an illustration after I just raved about the illustrations? Like, check, like this is the monster like leaning outside his window. The illustrations, they're just like black and white, which is not normally my thing, but the illustrations really, really work in this. This was so incredibly powerful. It's a difficult read. It's incredibly emotionally heart-wrenching. But I thought that this was so... It really spoke to me about... It was really... There's a word that I'm trying to think of that's just not coming to my head. It was really validating, I guess you could say, about anger and the anger you can feel when someone you love is going to be, like, is possibly going to be taken from you. And I thought it was really validating for the anger. That's the main thing that I really took away from this. This book is definitely just like a gut punch of a book. It hit me right in the throat, and I feel teary-eyed almost just thinking about the emotions that this pulled out of me when I read it. Like, whew, boy, loved it. But you know what that means? It is time for my number 1 favorite book of the year. Drum roll. I don't know if you guys can predict what it is. It's Asking for It by Louise O'Neill. Another incredibly difficult, gut-wrenching read, but in a totally different way. This is a story about Emma, who was at a party and was gang raped. And it's basically about the aftermath of that, is pretty much what this is about. It's a very stark look at rape culture, victim blaming. This book made me feel sick, but in a really important way. The author, I think, makes an incredibly brave choice to make Emma, the main character, an incredibly unlikable character. I think there is a tendency when writing this type of story to want to make the victim as relatable as possible, as pitiable as possible, which sounds awful, but the author made a really brave choice to make Emma. I don't like Emma. She's not someone I'd want to be friends with. She's not someone I'd want to hang out with. Do I think that that means that Emma deserves the stuff that happened to her? No. And that is a big part of this. I mean, I just think that was a really brave choice from Louise O'Neill. I thought this was incredibly well written, an incredible look at this. Is this the best book on rape fiction I've ever read? I think possibly it is, and I really like rape fiction. You know, if you watch my channel, it's a topic that I'm always interested in. This is the best book I've read on it, the best fiction book I've read on it. Really, really, really enjoyed this. Obviously, huge trigger warnings. But if this is a book that you think that you can handle, I definitely recommend checking it out, because I think it's got a lot of really important like stuff to say on this topic, and just looking at the realities of what can come out of this. So we're kind of ending on a downer, but like in a good way, because I think this is a really, really great book. That's it. Those are my top 10 favorite books of 2019. I would love, 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 love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, and if you loved them, I want to chat with you about them. If you didn't like them, I'm happy to hear that opinion. Like, let's chat about it. What didn't you like about it? I'd like to know. Yeah, because, you know, I can be respectful of different opinions, funnily enough. But yeah, I'd love to chat. Or your favorite books of the year. Obviously, you might have had different favorites to me. It's very likely that you did. What were they? I want to know, because if I haven't read them, I probably want to, and I need to include them in a marked as to read video in future. So let me know your favorites down below. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye, guys.